What is up, everybody? Today's a very special day here at Blade HQ because Ben Belkin from Jack Wolf Knives came all the way from Arizona. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. You have a good trip?
Easy peasy, just a little bit of turbulence, but I'm here to stay.
Well, wonderful. Hopefully not too long. Don't you have a flight tonight?
Here to stay with you today, talk about slip joint knives.
Yeah, so if you can see the table right now, some of you astute knife viewers will notice that there is not a single locking knife on the table. I don't even have one in my pocket because today is all about this. Today's slip joints are the belle of the ball. And I'm excited about this because, I mean, Ben's been here for a couple hours now, and I've learned more in that 2 hours than I've learned in 5 years at Blade HQ about slip joints. And they're super cool and they fly under the radar. So we're gonna ask him some questions. Now, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and let us know what you would like to know. But I have some questions to start with. So, I want to call you Jack Wolf. Okay, first question. This isn't even listed.
Yeah.
Tell us how the name Jack Wolf came about.
That's a great question. I do get called Jack at the knife shows and stuff, and I don't ever correct people, but my name is Ben, and Jack Wolf Belkin was my grandfather. And my grandfather always had a slip joint knife in his pocket. His favorite, when I was a kid, were Swiss Army knives. He was a builder, and he really liked all the tools that were on the Swiss Army knives. And when I was a little kid, you know, he had a pocket dump on his dresser, and he had a crystal plate I think he took from my grandmother's cabinets, and he would put all his stuff there. And there was nothing I wanted more than to get my hands on that Swiss Army knife and play with it, put it in my pocket. And yeah, I associate my love of knives with my grandfather, and I've been hooked on them ever since.
So Jack Wolf Knives is named after Jack Wolf Belkin, a great man. And I'll tell you, if I were in the same situation and people called me by my grandfather's name, I'd be more honored than anything.
For sure. I think that's one thing a lot of people in this hobby can relate to, is that we have an older brother or a dad or a grandpa or an uncle, usually a male figure in our lives, who introduced us to knives. And a lot of times that would have been a slip joint knife because the older generations commonly carried slip joint knives. That's what everybody had.
Okay. So there's a lot that goes into a slip joint that we were talking about. So what makes these so special?
Well, it's a great question. They look simple, but there's a lot going on here. What makes them special? Well, they're timeless. I think that's the most important thing to consider. The hardest test of anything is the test of time, not, you know, how long the edge will retain or how much it weighs or, you know, this kind of thing, how durable it is. If a design can withstand hundreds of years and not disappear, to me, that's saying something. And a lot of slip joint designs have been around for centuries. So that's one thing that makes them special. They're timeless. Another thing that makes them special is they're extremely ergonomic. They're easy to carry. You carry them in your pocket, and they're non-threatening. What I mean by that is, oftentimes with modern folders, they have perhaps an aggressive aesthetic. And if you were to open that knife for something non-aggressive use, cut open a box or whatever, cut a strap off of something.
Get yourself a can of beans out of the box at Walmart.
Get yourself a can of beans. If you were to do that in front of someone who's not into knives, they will probably be alarmed at least. With a slip joint knife, I don't think you're going to get the same reaction.
Just bring this thing out and...
Right. You know, for several reasons. One, it's a form factor that people are familiar with. Oh, my grandpa had a knife like that, or my uncle had a knife like that.
A non-threatening fond figure in my life had that knife.
Correct, and they probably used it to peel an apple, or they'll get a nostalgic feeling first before a fight or flight response. And then also, it's a two-handed deal. So I think people, forget sometimes that when you open a knife one-handed, it's more alarming than if you use two hands, because when someone sees what you're doing with both hands, they probably feel a little more in control of the situation if you if both your hands are visible. So it's like there's subtleties there, but I think they're important. And ask yourself this: if you went to the post office and you were standing in line and you had to cut open an envelope or something, would you be more comfortable doing it with a classic slip joint knife or with a modern folder with a
Like a
4-inch
Benchmade
blade.
Adamas.
Yeah.
Big old beefy Warzone knife.
Yeah, and another thing, and maybe more for the aficionados here, is these knives are super fidgety. People think that, oh, it's a slip joint knife, it doesn't have the fidget factor, something I can flick open or thumb flip, and I would beg to differ. George, why don't you pick up one of these and make it walk and talk, and people can get a sense of how that sounds and how that moves. Very satisfying from a fidget standpoint, and of course we all know that fidgeting with your knife is not really associated with its value as a tool, but we're buying functional art here, and we appreciate things more than just what they provide as a tool.
The sound is so good on these. So we're actually doing a giveaway today of one of these, right?
We are the white marble
pull that one out.
carbon fiber.
So make sure you're staying tuned, paying attention, because we're going to talk a little bit about some slip joint anatomy in this video at some point, and he's going to drop some facts. And one of those facts we're going to ask you for at the end of the video, and whoever gets that first gets to take home this mini cyborg jack. I'm not going to lie, I am jealous. This is such a good knife. Yeah, but like, there's a special feeling to a slip joint. It just, like, yeah, it's almost like an altar on which you communicate with people who came before, but also a medium where you can demonstrate supreme quality in manufacturing and quality and materials. It's just so nice.
Yeah, it's, you know what's nice about it too? It's something different. I think a lot of folks today have in their knife collection, one or more modern folders. And you can get button locks, and you can get access locks or their equivalent. You can get frame locks, you can get liner locks. But where do you go from there? Right? Well, there's a whole nother world here, and it's the slip joint knife.
Who says you need a lock at all?
Who says you need a lock at all? Depending on what you're doing, I will make the case you don't need a lock on your knife. Certain tasks, it makes more sense, but everyday carry, I think the stuff most of us are doing, if you don't need to thrust or poke or pry and you're just slicing, this is the bee's knees.
Yeah, so I mean, my next question, you kind of just answered it, is when should you pick a slip joint? And I mean, for my job, I have an interesting job in that I get to play with knives all day and I get to show people different things. So for the purposes of making videos and content, I need the knives. But when I'm sitting at my desk writing an article or whatever, I mean, if I need a knife, it's to open my lunch, slice an apple or something. And that's more than enough.
Yeah, and let's not be mistaken. Slip joint knives have been doing hard work for centuries. Farmers carried slip joint knives. Cattlemen carried slip joint knives. So they'll do the hard work. So when is the right time to have a slip joint knife? I would say just about always. I think where they will not perform as well as a modern folder is if you need one-handed deployment and one-handed closing frequently. Like if you've got one hand doing something else, it's nice to be able to do this. But if your lifestyle is such that you have the time to withdraw your knife and open it, use it, and close it, you're not going to feel shortchanged by carrying a slip joint. In fact, you'll probably really like its more compact form factor, because the majority of the time our knives are not deployed. They're usually in a pocket or on a pocket. And so you're getting more bang for the buck as far as the overall size of the package, I think.
Yeah, and we were talking about slips a little. Can we talk about slips for a second?
Absolutely.
So you were talking about how sometimes with the modern folders, they flick open, they're really fast, and then they're closed fast and they're back in your pocket. You're like, you spent how much money on a knife so that you could minimize the amount of time it spends in your hand? Whereas a slip joint, you pull it out of your pocket, it's a two-hand thing, you have a moment to look at it. But when you add a slip to it, not only does that protect your knife, but that seriously levels up the whole experience. So tell us about some of these slips, because these ones, that's good.
Yeah, well, that's just it, George. First of all, you can carry these without a slip. Drop it in your pocket, it'll be just fine. You'll get some snail trails on your titanium, and that's part of the character of it all. You'll also accumulate more lint more quickly. So if you want to protect the finish on your knife, if you want to reduce the amount of debris that gets into the pivot, a leather slip, I think, is a good idea. Now, when you buy a Jack Wolf, there's a leather slip included, and it's really fine quality. But one of the things my collectors like to do, and I like to do as a collector, is kind of level up my leather slip game. And there's a whole world of slip makers in our community that can make you slips of different sizes, different shapes, different materials. Like it never ends. I brought a sampling of some of these today. Some of these I'm selling at jackwolfknives.com. I've got shell cordovan, which is derived from a horse. It's really fine. I've got elephant with suede lining and saddle leather. And we've got Minerva, which is the type of leather this is, with laser engraving. And this is just a small example of some of the stuff that's out there. But to your point, what I wish people would, experience with a slip joint knife is not just the knife itself, but it's the whole experience of carrying it and using it. So like you said, you take the knife from your pocket, it's in the leather slip. You have a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship. You have something natural in your hand, And then you withdraw your knife from the slip, maybe put the slip back in your pocket or on the table. So now you're looking at your knife. So you have a moment to do this. You're not going to open it one-handed, so you're not busy doing something else with your other hand. You're going to take a moment, open your knife, and hear it walk and talk. Make that awesome sound. Feel that spring. Make your cut. It's the same thing in reverse now. I'm going to use two hands to close my knife. I'm going to retrieve my slip. And it's not like this takes 2 minutes. This takes a matter of additional seconds. But in a world where we're moving so fast all the time with everything we do, isn't it nice to spend a little more time appreciating what you spent your hard-earned money on, which is excellent craftsmanship, functional art, and something you enjoy emotionally, not just logically.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that sounds really nice. I'm a hopeless romantic. I love to talk about feelings. And I really connect with that on a slip joint.
I think the romantic, emotional part of people appreciate slip joint knives because of the nostalgia. And these are modern traditionals, they call these, so modern materials. These are a little colder than perhaps the old-fashioned knives that use brass and use bone and use wood. Like, I would describe those as warm. And not that one's any better or worse, they're just different. But if you were into nostalgia, if you're into sort of that notion of having a tool that my forefathers had before me, you'll get that feeling with a slip joint. And I don't think people necessarily recognize that right away, but that's how it grows on them. And then they're like, man, I kind of want to learn more about this. So all of a sudden, well, this knife I'm carrying, like that case trapper there.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder how many of those they've made.
How many
I
tens
wonder
of
how
millions
many
of
of
them?
those they've made, because go to like places like Texas and man, every dude's got one of these on his belt in like a sheath or something. And it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, so you're telling me that the spade blade here is for some less than enjoyable jobs.
Well, it's a job that needs to get done. Maybe not everybody wants to get it done, but yeah, it's for neutering cattle. So there's one kind of neat thing about slip joint knives is there's different blade shapes that were designed to do different tasks, and they're very different looking from what you see on modern folders. And that's really what attracted me to slip joint knives is their designs are so different from the modern stuff that you see today.
Often they tend to be very small and pocketable too, like the peanut right here. This thing is super small. This one was made in the 90s, but it's still being produced today. And I imagine if somebody, like, I only occasionally open an Amazon box or whatever, then this knife is not at all a burden to carry.
No, and in fact, a knife like that will take some trips through the washing machine because you're gonna forget that it's there. Now, another thing about this that I think we should mention is, boy, wouldn't this go great in like the fifth pocket of your jeans?
Oh, yeah.
So if you prefer to carry a modern folder, well, this makes a nice little backup knife that you could deploy in the situation where the modern folder maybe isn't appropriate. Workplace, bank, post office.
Grocery store.
Whatever it may be. Grocery store, exactly.
Yeah. I had never thought of that. Like, because sometimes I'm like, I went through this phase when I was first getting into knives where like every knife I buy I must have an absolute need for it. And after a while I'm like, why am I carrying 6 knives? I only need one. You know what? I'm a collector. I'm just gonna admit it to myself. A lot of them are gonna stay home and I'm gonna carry a different one every single day. But this, like, I had never thought, like, I carry another knife so I don't spook people in public. And that is a perk of a slip joint that you're just not getting from big manual folders.
Yeah.
Or autos or OTFs or any of that stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guys that do carry a slip joint as a secondary for that reason. And yeah, they're versatile. They work good. Another thing you'll find on slip joints a lot, if we talk about the blades themselves, is because they're not trying to be durable enough for prying tasks, they're not grinding these things like wedges. These things are ground thin behind the edge. And so when you get a nice slip joint for the first time and you actually slice something with it, it's like, man, holy cow, this thing's like a laser beam. It's like, well, because it's designed specifically for slicing.
Yeah, I guess like with a lock, oftentimes people will brag about how strong the lock is. But if the lock is strong, you have to put an overly built blade on it, because if you don't, then why have the strength of the lock if not a blade that can match it?
Exactly.
But here, we don't care. We just want a knife that cuts really well.
Right. This is a purpose-built slicing tool. If you need something that locks and you need something that's durable, it will be at the sacrifice of that slicing ability. It just has to be. There's no one thing that does it all.
It's just physics.
Right.
Kind of stuck with that one. So, you've already sold me on the idea of a slip joint. Now tell me how to shop for one. Like, what do I look for?
Got it. So you will find slip joints at varying price points. And I think what you're just going to find, the higher you go up in price, the more refined everything becomes. That's in the material selection, the fit and finish, the blade grinds, and just the overall execution. So we can kind of talk about, since my stuff is at a higher standard and therefore at a higher price point, I'll show you some of the things that makes a Jack Wolf different. So the first thing you'll see guys talk about is the back spring. So this is the back spring here, and this back spring moves when you open and close the knife. And so you want this back spring to be flat and flush in all three positions. And that means that this back spring is not sitting proud of the liners or sunk beneath the liners. In the open position, in the half stop position, or in the closed position. You can check that out.
Okay.
So a flat and flush back spring in all three positions, that's one thing.
That's perfectly flushed. Yeah.
And the only way that can be achieved is that the knife, when it's assembled, is ground as an assembly. And then once that happens, all the parts in this knife are mated for life. So their numbers matched at that point, and you can't have parts interchangeability. Another thing you're looking for is seamless transitions between materials. So if you ran your fingers where the carbon fiber meets the titanium, you're not going to be able to catch a nail. You're not going to feel anything. If you were to just close your eyes, it feels all smooth. And that goes for not just across the top here, but here along the spine.
Yeah, like you can tell an ever so slight difference in the texture on this one because it kind of has that tumbled titanium.
Right.
I wouldn't notice it otherwise.
Yeah, you're not going to catch the transition. You can obviously feel a difference in the texture, but certainly you're not going to catch the transitions.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you're carrying a slip, that'll be way easier on your slip in the long term as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then let's see, in addition, you have, so this knife has 3mm blade stock and it's hollow ground. So you're getting thicker blade stock than I would say is typical from production slip joint knives. And that thicker blade stock is just going to give you an overall stronger joint right here. But then with the hollow grind, you're getting grinds that are between 10 and 15 thousandths of an inch behind the
That's
edge.
so thin.
And so
Isn't paper only like 8?
I'm not. I think it's 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So you're just getting, at this price point, you're getting these touches, which are more often found on custom knives. So that's really what I was after, is providing custom knife touches. Yeah, feel that hollow grind. You can actually feel it, the dish.
Oh yeah, that's got quite a bit of curve in there. And another perk of hollow grinds is as you sharpen them, you remove material, you still end up with a thin edge. And that is something
Correct.
that I've noticed on a lot of old knives. Whenever I go visit old people, they're like, yeah, look at my knife that I've been carrying since the dawn of time. As they sharpen it back, their flat grind, these edges get thickums McGee, thick with triple C.
Yeah.
But these ones, they're going to stay slicey for a long time. And plus, these are using very mild steels that were available back then. But S90V has really good edge retention.
Yeah, a lot of the older slip joints, you'll see their main blade looks like a toothpick. It's been sharpened so much, and they're sharpening them in the field because they go dull quickly. And it's just the nature of that product type.
Yeah.
S90V is going to give you exceptional edge retention, and it's stainless, and it's not the toughest steel of them all, but you're not really looking for toughness in a knife used for this task. So I think it suits these really well. Another thing you're going to look for in a slip joint knife is what we call the walk and talk, and that just simply means how the blade moves between the positions and how it sounds when it does so. And so you're looking for something that's giving you spring tension and then jumps away and has a really satisfying kind of thunk to it. And then same thing when you're closing it, like that. And it has like a resonance, makes a sound. And every knife is unique. It's like a tuning fork. Every one is just a little bit different. And
It's like you said, all these knives have like basically custom fit pieces together. Everything's numbered, so I'll bet you even across models, like if you picked up another one of these with this same handle material, it would probably sound a little bit different.
It's a fact. So it's just something unique to the slip joints. You're looking for a quality walk and talk. It needs to be smooth, and it needs to be satisfying. It doesn't need to be, but that's what you're looking for. And the more refined the knife is, the more expensive it becomes, but the more satisfying those elements are executed.
Yeah, so taking this knowledge and comparing it to this, I found this knife a long time ago. It had a really rusted blade and has a little bit of pitting on there. But as you can see here on its half stop, it ever so slightly, we have a standout there. And this one actually has pretty good transitions for the handle materials. But I did some digging, and when this knife was sold, it was like a $30 knife. And honestly, I'm impressed for $30 with this, but if you want the next level, if you want a steel that won't pit because it won't rust, if you want these pins to be sanded down and flushed, or even to be screws like that, I mean, these are little details that will cost you money.
They will. And I think this is an interesting comparison, is that this is going to be a traditional knife, what we call a traditional knife, and this is a modern traditional knife. And so you can see the DNA is still there, but there's key differences. We have grooved bone covers. We have full slab titanium scales in this case. We have pins versus screws. We have probably 1095 versus S90V.
Got to turn the watch off. Sorry about that.
And this has brass liners, and this is full integral titanium liners and bolsters. Well, it doesn't have bolsters because it's full, but this one, for example, has integral titanium liners.
Yeah, and then are you using kieranite on these covers?
Yeah, actually. This is kieranite, and kieranite's one of those interesting materials that shows up today on traditional knives. Great Eastern Cutlery uses it.
And Case has a line with it as well.
They do, and acrylics have been used through the decades on traditional knives. So it's not unusual to find acrylics on old-fashioned slip joints. And what I've found really interesting is as I have deployed this kieranite, how much people really love it. And it's the modern knife guys who aren't getting it on their modern knives. So they're like, oh, I don't have anything like that in my collection. It's like, check it out. You know, if you like this, you might like some of the traditional stuff.
Man, that pink and black, what a good mix.
We like to be a little bold in our choices. It's not always for everyone. We try to provide offerings that are more middle of the road, but I don't know, I like to go into left field a little bit with what we do.
Look at this Cordovan with that pink on the cover there, plus the slip. Ooh, that's a good mix.
Yeah, I've been carrying that. That's why that slip is well worn. Yep.
Well, I love it. Do y'all have the crazy resin handles? What Josh Wheezy's asking.
That's what this is right here.
So this is not kieranite.
This is not kieranite. This material is called chaotic resin. And the gentleman who makes this, he's an artist first. And he pours this resin material in these molds, and every single one is different. Every single piece is different. It's some of the coolest stuff I have ever seen. So yeah, it's like I said, this kind of stuff isn't for everybody, but it's
Boy, does
for
it
me.
look good.
I tell you that. So really happy with how these came out. And what else, George? What else can we talk about?
So I was going to ask you how the old world and the new world have sort of combined. We've talked a little bit about that, but I've noticed hardware is one of those areas.
Yeah, I think we have some good ways to demonstrate this. So let's start with maybe your Boker there.
Yeah.
So here's a good example of an old world knife. We
Here, I'll
have
drive.
we have wood covers, we have pin construction, we have a shield, we have some kind of carbon steel, obviously.
That one's 01.
01.
I'm a nerd, sorry.
That's okay. And we have a very traditional pattern here. This is an equal end or a cigar pattern. I mean, kind of like what a Swiss Army knife looks like. It doesn't get much more classic than this spear point blade.
Yeah.
So
you were telling me about, oh, sorry, can we go on a tangent about this real quick?
Yeah.
The nails, the match strike on the groove.
yeah, this features a match strike pull. So it's kind of got this zigzag pattern, and you could strike a blue tip match on it. So
And
kind
if
of
it's
neat.
a cigar, that's so classy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
right? You could cut the end off your cigar, strike your match, and
Yeah.
There you
All
go.
But this is the super traditional one.
right. And so from there,
Oh,
you can
that's
see how some of this has been sort of iterated. So I'll take this one here. So we still have a slip joint. We still have kind of a classic Turkish style clip point blade here, but I've taken some liberties with the design of the handle, used some angles, and really tried to, this is one of my designs that's more astray from traditional shapes. The majority of the slip joints in my catalog look very similar shape-wise to traditional knives. This one's the mini cyborg jack, so I kind of made it futuristic. But the DNA is definitely still there. Now it has titanium screws instead of pins. That's a major differentiator. What's cool about titanium hardware is you can anodize it for color accents.
Yeah, on this titanium, we got that lovely pink accent.
Yeah, we call it purple, but
Purple,
I could
pink.
see it both ways. Yep.
Maybe it's just the lighting here.
Yep. And then I'll show you this. I'll show you a couple other knives. This is my friend Tom at Notorious EDC. So he's taken the form factor and modernized it even more. He's got a harpoon style blade and an iteration of a gun stock style handle.
Yeah. Also, this is the coolest name of a knife I've ever heard.
The Kingpin. Yep.
Oh, so good.
Yep. And but what I'm just really pleased to see that the DNA is being preserved. You know, this is an interesting piece. This is from my collection. This is from a guy named Ricardo Romano in Brazil, and this is a Tony Bose Lanny's clip design. And this is made from Westinghouse micarta, antique Westinghouse micarta. So this is going to resemble more of a traditional knife, but with high-end material choices. And the Lanny's clip isn't really an old-fashioned design. I think it's from the 70s or the 80s, the handle
Yeah.
and blade shape combination. But it's really endless how far you can go. I mean, there's feature-wise, the Kingpin has a stop pin. My knives don't have a stop pin. That's really just a matter of preference. There's pros and cons to each. We could get into that if you wanted. And then something like this is really an even more modern expression of the non-locking pocket knife. This is a double detent, and so it does not have a back spring, but it does retain in the close, retain in the half, and retain in the open. And so is it a slip joint? I would not classify it as a slip joint because it doesn't have a back spring, but you can see how it's still reflective of the classic pocket knife. But design-wise, it looks very different. Very much looks like a small modern folder, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see it. So, I guess, well, thanks for taking us on the brief tour here, but it looks like we were, what's the word I'm looking for? Water skiing on top of a reef. Like, we saw a little bit, we went far away a little ways, but if you get deep, it goes deep, and there's a lot to find.
Yeah, it does. If you're into history, then the world's your oyster with this stuff. There's multiple brands, there's multiple patterns from different places in the world. There's single blade knives, multi-blade knives. There's an ungodly amount of materials these things were made out of. There's books that's been written. There's forums on the internet where people talk about this stuff. So it's just a different part of our hobby that I have been working hard to introduce the modern folder guys to, because I love it. And my thought was, you know, if the bone and the brass and the 1095 is a bridge too far. Well, what if I serve it up to you with titanium and carbon fiber and S90V? It's like, is that a bridge too far, or does that look like the knife you already have in your pocket?
Yeah. But there's a million ways that you can take it.
Yeah, we just got to
adventure.
get people onto Slipjoint Island and then let them explore, you know?
Okay. So, say we're on Slipjoint Island. What are the most collectible knives? Like, what are the ones people are looking for?
That's a great question. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that. I can tell you what I like and what I think is popular. So there's an American manufacturer called Great Eastern Cutlery. They're in Titusville, Pennsylvania, which is northwest Pennsylvania. It's actually such a beautiful part of our country up there. And they're
The Endless
making
Mountains.
Yeah, it's right. They're making knives the old-fashioned way. They have like all those machines in there that they have to maintain and build parts for themselves because they're 100 years old. They do have some modern CNC in there to speed things up, but as a whole, they're doing it the old-fashioned way, and they're just absolutely beautiful. There's a really strong collector base, and it's fun. For some people, it's frustrating because they're hard to get, but that's part of it. So I would say if you're into American-made traditional cutlery, Great Eastern Cutlery is a great place to start. Case knives, they still produce knives to this day, but they also have made knives for decades. So some guys focus on vintage case, some guys focus on modern case, and then there's custom slip joint knives, and we're talking, you know, entry level $300-400, all the way up to the moon. And some of these guys are producing just gorgeous works of art, and the best way to see some of that stuff in person would definitely be the knife shows. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I've learned is, like, you don't have to go to, like, Blade Show to find the good makers. Like, they go to the small shows. They, like, I guess old-fashioned, face-to-face. They want to do business with people they see, shake hands with them, and that's something I just love about traditional folders, is it's not just a traditional knife, but it's a sort of a traditional way of life and way of communicating with people that I find very charming about the slip joint community.
Yeah, I would agree. And a lot of the guys making the high quality slip joints right now, like, they don't use a computer very much. You know, there's some older folks who have been doing it for a long time. Fortunately, there's a new guard coming up, some younger guys who are picking up the torch and running with it, and I'm really glad to see that. But I think because they're learning from the older guys, they're going to respect the tradition. They're going to go to those smaller knife shows. They're going to want to meet people and kind of do things the way slip joints have been done.
Okay. So what's next in the world of slip joints?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I would say that there's a lot of, I think there's been more premium offerings on the market, and I think that's good. You know, I think more brands are going to produce them, and that's going to drive more customers to be interested in them, and then we're going to hopefully see some innovation. I don't know what that looks like because I don't try to innovate so much as I try to iterate with materials. I'd like to see some innovation. Probably won't come from me. I'm more of a purist with the form factor. But I just think what's next for slip joints is more people getting into slip joints. Yeah.
Well, sign me up. Where's the list? I'm there. Like, I am very intrigued by all of these slip joints and the walk and talk you've been talking about. I think I have decided that I am not a stop pin man because I need to hear that. Oh, I'm sorry. We can't just fidget on camera all day. But I totally would.
It's very musical. The good thing about a stop pin is that it protects your cutting edge. So no matter what, that stop pin is going to dead stop that knife in the closed position and not allow the cutting edge to strike the inside of the blade well, which is the back side of the spring.
Yeah. Now here in the kingpin, I don't know if the camera can see down there, but there is a pin back here that catches the kick here and makes it so it doesn't go.
And from
from
a brand owner standpoint, boy, it really makes a lot of sense because you're going to eliminate essentially 100% of customer service inquiries associated with what's called blade wrap. Wrap, like wrapping your knuckles on the door. And so blade wrap is when the blade over travels and strikes the spring and will roll the edge. And we're not talking major damage here, but it's enough to see in the light and it needs to be repaired. So if you don't have a stop pin, it's always a risk, albeit a very small risk. It's always a risk that that blade could wrap. But
if you know what to do and what not to do, your blade's gonna
yeah,
be perfectly
if you
safe.
exactly, if you have good open and closing habits, if you don't slam it shut and drive the blade into the well with your finger, if you keep it in a slip and don't compress it while it's in your pocket, it'll be fine. And it does change the sound of the blade closing with or without a stop pin, which is where I prefer the acoustics of the no stop pin.
Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed this. I could keep going all day, but I'm getting the sign from my team over here that it's time for us to wrap up. Before we do, we have a knife to give away. So, do you want to ask the question or should I?
I'll ask the question.
All right.
So,
To win this knife, the first person to correctly answer this question wins.
all right. So, modern knives, the carbon fiber material, for example, on a modern knife, we would call that the scale. But we don't call them scales on slip joint knives. What do we call that?
So we're talking about this part right here, yeah?
Yep, the inlay, and the answer is not inlay.
Answer is not inlay.
The answer
And
is
it's
not
not
scale.
scale. Handle. Oh, the two bird dogs.
The two bird dogs
Got
takes
it.
it.
Covers. Well done. Man, that was fast.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to get it. So the two bird dogs, we will ship this one to you. We need to know how you want to reach out to us. You reach out over Instagram or email. If you reach out over email, we need to let customer service know. But, man, they were fast. They were
Yeah.
paying attention. Maybe they just knew. I didn't know that until today. Well, Ben, thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming out here.
my
This has
pleasure.
been enlightening. I think I need to build out my slip joint collection a little bit more. All of my slip joints were given to me by men, older men that I really admire. But I think I need to pave my own path here as well.
Yeah, and one day maybe you buy something of your liking that wasn't handed to you, and maybe you get to hand that down to someone one day and keep that tradition alive. That's all part of it, I think.
Yep. Well, I'm certainly grateful for you coming and showing us the world of slip joints, and we hope that Blade HQ gets to be a bigger part of it in the future. So if you like slip joints, make sure you're following along with us, and make sure you follow Jack Wolf as well. These guys are paving the path forward in what it takes to do no stone unturned, perfect premium slip joints. And I wish we had more time and we could talk about like how you manage to do different tensions on the poles and everything. But you're doing really good work over there, Ben.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.